Good morning, everyone. Dini and I are in Philadelphia. We dropped off our son Uziel at law school yesterday, and as I was touring the beautiful campus at Penn, I was reminded of the story of these elderly Jewish grandparents who were invited to their graduation of their grandson who graduated Penn, and he was a big honor, and as they're sitting there in the big hall with thousands of families and friends, shepping nachas, the valedictorian gets up to give his speech, and he begins to talk about Penn, and he says, the P stands for persistence, and he goes on for 15-20 minutes about the P of persistence, and the E of Penn stands for excellence, and he talks another 20 minutes about excellence of the school, and then he says, and then the N stands for nurturing, what a nurturing school it is, another 15-20 minutes, and the next N is about nobility, and after an hour, the elderly the grandfather, turns to his wife and says, "Thank God, our grandson is not graduating from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology." And walking around the campus and seeing these bright young students with a life filled with potential and promise ahead of them is just beautiful to see. Especially when your son walks around with his yarmulke and tzitzis on, made me very proud. But then, when I, in the evening, went around the city a little bit, I've never spent time here in Philadelphia, I saw something completely different. In this week's Torah portion, we have one of the most beautiful verses in the Torah. Banim atem l'Hashem lokechem. God says, you are children to Almighty God. God says, you are my children, I am your loving Father. And our relationship is like a parent and a child. But the commentaries say there's a deeper meaning to this verse. The verse is not just about our love to God, like a child to a parent and God's love to us, but it's also about our love to one another. Because you see, if we say that God is our Father in heaven, that means every other human being is your brother and sister. Because God is all of our parents. And therefore, to be a religious person and a God-loving person includes loving your fellow man, because we are all children to God. And just like as a parent, we all know that imagine a child who says, I love you, Mom, I love you, Dad, but I can't stand my brothers and sisters. I don't want to have anything to do with them. I don't care about them. There's no greater pain to a parent. And there's no greater joy to a parent to see one child helping the other child, loving each other, caring for each other. That's the greatest gift, the greatest nachas to any parent. And therefore God says, remember my love for you, but remember therefore that you're all brothers and sisters and you have to love one another. And that's why in the evening, when we drove around the city here, I've never seen, recently at least, so much homelessness in one city. Literally people lying up and down the streets, in certain areas obviously. And the human beings who have human dignity, who are in the image of God, who are children of God, lying on the floor as though they're garbage, God forbid. And it was such a contrast. Here at Penn, just a few miles away, you see these young kids coming from mostly, comfortable homes, affluent homes, with a life full of promise and prestige. And then you see human beings lying on the floors, sleeping on the ground, living out of boxcars. And you say to yourself, how could this be in the same city, so close to one another? And then I realized something else. You see, all these kids at Penn, they didn't just wake up one day and arrive at Penn. It was a lifetime of dedication and love and care and education invested in these children. One positive decision after another by the family, by the parents, by the children, that led them to this culmination. The same thing is with these homeless people. They didn't just wake up one morning and was born on the streets. They were born little children to parents. But if tragically there must have been one bad set of circumstances followed by another bad set of circumstances, followed by another disappointment and another failure and another painful experience and another neglect, until it led to them being on the floor on the streets, eating out of garbages. Versus those children who had a lifetime of love and dedication and positive experiences. And therefore, we have to think about the fact that human beings don't end up that way by themselves. where we end up is a result of thousands and thousands of small micro actions. And therefore, while I may not be able to solve homelessness, it is something our society has to figure out how to deal with. But what we could do is when we look around at another human being who's in pain, who's going through a challenge, don't look the other way. Remember, they're a child of God. They're your brother. They're your sister. And if you neglect them, you never know where they could end up. And if you help them, you also never know where they could end up. They could lead a promising life of education, of accomplishment, of being a positive citizen, contributing to society. Or, God forbid, they could live a life of homelessness. And therefore, never turn a blind eye to your fellow brother and sister. There's a story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who would receive every day at 770 Eastern Parkway sacks of mail with thousands of letters of people who would write to them with their struggles, with their problems, with their challenges, looking for advice. And the Rebbe would read every letter and with his secretaries respond to every single letter. Now the Rebbe would open each letter with his hands. So one day someone had an idea. It was back in the 80s. They came out with this new electric envelope opener, and they brought a gift to the Rebbe, an automatic electric opener to open the envelope. The Rebbe put it back in the box and returned it. So the fellow asked the Rebbe, I was just trying to give you a gift. I know you have to open thousands of letters every day by hand. I want to make it a little easier. Why don't you want to accept it? And the Rebbe said, when people write to me a letter, different people seal their letters different ways. Some people seal their letters with saliva. Other people seal their letters with glue. Other people seal their letters with Scotch tape. But then there are some people who seal their letters to me with their tears. How can I open a letter that was sealed with a human being's tears? How can I open that with a machine? What the Rebbe was saying is we have to be sensitive to the pain of every human being. There are people who are crying, some people outwardly, some people inwardly. And God says, remember, I'm your father. Yes, I love you, I care about you, but I also care about all my children. And therefore I expect you to care about the plight of your fellow man, your brothers and sisters. Have a wonderful day.